Hey, it's your buddy. Peace and harmony with you here today. Zooming in on more of the chaos and crazy making that ensues when one is involved with a female psychopath. A female psychopath is diagnosed as a form of a personality disorder where there's a lack of morality or a lack of conscience. This is actually a physiological component in the brain where within the psychopath there's an area of the brain called the amygdala and the paralimbic system, which are shown in the brain scans of psychopaths to show reduced activity. So these are the centers of activity in the brain responsible for impulse control, for morality, for justice, and really for developing a sense of emotional connection between words. So there's a whole disconnect from really what we call a conscience. So in other words, if you're going to slam into another car, chances are you wouldn't do it because you have a conscience. Your conscience would kick in, it would be wrong, you'd ruin your car, you'd ruin the other guy's car, maybe someone would be injured, your conscience kicks in. Excuse me. So that's the sense of right or wrong. And it's, morality. Same thing can go with financial transactions, being honest to a lover, being honest in your employment, things of that nature. And this has been likened, in a lot of males as a very aggressive sort of personality type. And there's actually quite a bit more male psychopaths that are basically in the psychological diagnostic system, as well as in the prison system, just because the males tend to be more prone to violence and criminal behavior, so they get identified and incarcerated. Not so much the female psychopaths, because they really manifest this lack of conscience and this lack of empathy and this cunning and really sort of sadistic behavior in other ways. And usually it's diagnosed as more of a narcissistic quality. A lot of health psychoanalysts are prone to diagnose it as narcissistic rather than psychopathic, just because of the way that they interpret it. However, there's quite a bit of crazy making, and when we look at the Hare checklist, Dr. Robert Hare was one of the premier psychologists who had really studied psychopaths in depth. A lot of other psychoanalysts, social psychologists, what have you, have really kind of shied away from this topic. So he is really the forerunner and really the one who has looked into this sort of disorder, personality disorder, and looked at really what are some of the key determining factors of this. And so how can we identify it, and what do we do about it once someone is like this is in our life? Because number one, they can be extremely cunning. And I'm going to go ahead and read off the 20 characteristics here. 20 traits include glib and superficial charm, grandiose, meaning extremely high estimation of self. They have an extreme need for stimulation. Pathological lying, cunning and manipulativeness, lack of remorse or guilt, shallow affect, meaning very superficial emotional connection and responsiveness, callousness, lack of empathy, parasitic lifestyle, poor behavioral controls, sexual promiscuity, early behavior problems, and lack of realistic long-term goals. Also included is impulsivity, irresponsibility, and failure to accept responsibility for their own actions, as well as many short-term marital relationships, including juvenile delinquency. So if we look at all of these, and this is a lot of traits, and I know that a lot of people say, well, I can be impulsive, or, I can sometimes be irresponsible, but, we're really talking on an extreme scale here. We're talking about really someone who has such a Machiavellian approach to them. They are so unscrupulous. They have so little disregard for others that they really can do a tremendous amount of lying at levels that would just, are criminal in terms of their severity. I mean, the type of lies that most people would feel comfortable lying about, they really exceed. They blow off the scales. So the crazy making often takes place within a whole kind of conglomerate of a lot of these different attributes, if you will. So being prone to pathological lying, impulsiveness, poor behavioral control, all this sort of dysregulation. Really, when we look at the crazy making of the female psychopath, she's utilizing this, what she feels is to her advantage. And feeling, unscrupulous, she feels like they have a right to basically be above the law and act with disregard for people, property, possessions, you name it. So we see a lot of this poor impulse control, number one. So impulse control can be in terms of verbal things that they say can be completely out of social norms, so they can have a lot of what we call deviousness, deviance as well, deviant, and also, what is the word I'm looking for? I'm gonna just say perversion. Sexual perversion, things of this nature. I'm just going to call it what it is. And the thing is, a lot of men who are drawn to this type of woman find that very superficial charm, which is called glib, which is just superficial. There's no substance, warmth, caring, emotional connection kind of backing it up. It's all very superficial. It's just like a piercing look in their eye. A lot of men get very tantalized by this, and they don't realize that that this woman pulls this look on anybody and everybody, and that, they're not the only ones. But the psychopathic female will definitely lead them to believe that they're extremely special to them and they're the one and only, and then they'll work to keep them constantly on their mind, so that they will not be able to really, get a clear head and realize what is happening as they're getting the rug pulled out from underneath them. In terms of, if we look at, we were just speaking of, Angelina Jolie's, some of her, exhibited behaviors. We look at a lot of other high-profile, women in the news who have done slanderous things to their spouses. And many men who have been through these types of relationships and discussed the crazy making, where they felt everything was so blissful and wonderful and couldn't be more perfect. It was, smooth sailing, and, this person was so cunning and unscrupulous. They had property transferred to their name, checking accounts transferred to their name, estates, written over as the new spouse, and then oftentimes, work in very isolating ways. So kind of pull them apart from their work, their family, so they kind of, are able to zero in and get full control over them. And then in the meanwhile, they've got all sorts of other plates spinning, where they've got all sorts of other relationships that they're yielding and wielding to basically burn off this sort of high energy promiscuity and how it plays out in their life. And that's just how they are. It's not like they just hit a phase. This is how these people are in life, and chances are they've had a lot of juvenile delinquency as well. So the crazy making can be, in other words, they're going to tell you one thing and then do another, and then shift on you, turn their ideas around 180% and then get you leading the other direction. So you have to be very careful of these really highly bodacious, sexualized women, even though they can be, appearing very strong and very accomplished. They really have been able to tap into this and really persuade a lot of men into doing things that they ordinarily would not be able to do. In other words, these women do have such a power. They do have a charm that is, able to knock men off of their feet. A lot of it is in that, psychopathic gaze that they have, that seductive look. And so if you've been victimized by this, you've been seduced, either in your career, either in your personal or love relationships, realize it was a seduction. There was no heart, emotion, connection backing it up. In fact, when they look at the brain scans again of the female psychopaths, they tend to register emotional scenes or pictures very differently than a normal healthy person. For example, if they were to see someone killed by a drunk driver, they don't feel a sense of grief or loss or emotion for that person. If they see somebody being stabbed, these types of things, they don't get the same sort of, oh my gosh, response. They're just able to very coolly and calmly observe this. So if you have been involved with the crazy making of a female psychopath, see if you can identify some of the impulsivity, the superficial charm, where it just seems to be all about very exterior and no real emotional values kind of working, simultaneously. See if you can identify some of the promiscuity and if that's caused any issues. And a lot of the pathological lying, doing one, saying one thing and doing another, pretending to be one way and actually being another. So these all kind of work together to create a lot of chaos. And the more chaos that they can create, the more control they are, and the more they have people really, wrapped around their finger. So if you have identified this and this has occurred to you, please just take stock and learn to draw boundaries so that you're not sucked in and seduced by the crazy making and chaos of a female psychopath. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos help. Please do share to those people in need, and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.